Living with Post-Stroke Fatigue and Early Warning, number 1727, July 25, 2026, Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation, Category Stroke. Preface for readers: eat more protein and fresh vegetables. Eat less red meat and processed food. Reduce food portions if overweight. Eating a little less will not hurt you. Overeating for yours will. Exercise every day. Walk at least 7,000 to 8,000 steps daily. Drink 85 to 100 ounces to 0.5 to 3.0 liters of water each day. Sleep 6 to 7 hours every night. Manage stress. Avoid emotionally draining people and unnecessary conflicts. Put your health first. Wealth, fame, and power mean little without health and life. Preface: this paper answers one central question: how do I live with the long-term consequences of a stroke while reducing the risk of another one? More than 13 months ago, a sharp, distinct white spot appeared on a CT scan of my brain, showing a small bleed near the pontine location. Looking at that tiny lesion on the film, it is completely understandable to feel amazed and sometimes deeply frustrated by how such a small point of brain damage can have such a massive, profound impact on daily energy. I never would have imagined that a tiny bleed on a CT scan could cause such deep, persistent physical exhaustion for over a year now. Understanding post-stroke fatigue: before the stroke, I was accustomed to a relatively high level of physical strength and endurance, routinely walking 14,000 to 15,000 steps a day. Today, my overall physical endurance feels like it has dropped below 50%, and my daily output sits closer to 6,000 to 7,000 steps. While going from 15,000 down to 6,000 steps felt like a massive drop initially, maintaining 6,000 to 7,000 steps while managing post-stroke energy reserves is actually a solid achievement. Pushing myself to walk whenever I can without driving myself to absolute collapse has proven to be exactly the right balance. Despite this physical exercise shift, my overall functional recovery from the stroke has gone remarkably well. I have emotionally and mentally accepted these changes, and whenever I am able, I still get out and walk. However, to manage this reality effectively and live with it peacefully, I needed to understand what was actually happening under the hood inside my brain, and why my physical energy felt so continuously depleted. What I came to realize is that post-stroke fatigue is not normal tiredness. It is classic post-stroke fatigue, one of the most common, persistent, and surprising long-term effects of a brain injury. Even when physical movement and motor functions recover well, the brain's energy grid takes a lot longer to rebuild. When a stroke damages brain tissue, the original, direct neural pathways are interrupted and blocked, much like electrical interconnections linking numerous transistors within a complex semiconductor chip. A semiconductor chip has a fixed wiring architecture established during fabrication, whereas the human brain possesses a dynamic wiring architecture capable of limited self-reconfiguration after injury. The brain is remarkably adaptable and begins rewiring itself around the damaged area through a neurological process called neuroplasticity, forming new neural circuits to bypass the injury. However, these new detour pathways are far less efficient than the original routes. Because of these detours, simple, everyday tasks that used to require minimal effort such as walking, processing sensory information, or maintaining balance require human brain to use extra energy. As a clear metaphor for what is happening under the hood, what used to cost the brain only 10% of its daily battery might now take 40%. On top of this mental battery drain, there are systemic energy drains happening continuously in the background: healing, managing internal blood pressure dynamics, and even the subtle physical adjustments made while walking take a continuous background toll on overall physical endurance. The deep exhaustion I feel is the direct physical result of my brain working vastly harder in the background just to manage routine movement. Living with post-stroke fatigue, we also learned that post-stroke fatigue isn't like normal tiredness. You cannot simply push through it. Trying to force your way through it usually backfires. Instead, my strategy of taking quick naps whenever I feel exhausted has been spot on. Post-stroke fatigue demands immediate rest. Short rests give the brain a crucial chance to clear metabolic waste and recharge its energy reserves without disrupting nighttime sleep schedules. Adopting this approach of focusing on activity pacing rather than physically pushing, and taking planned short rests before reaching complete absolute depletion has allowed me to safely maintain my 6,000 to 7,000 daily steps without crashing. Prevention of a second stroke. Looking ahead, my focus is entirely on long-term management and secondary stroke prevention. The small, calcified microvessels in my brain, which resulted from my 36 years of living with diabetes, cannot be repaired. Since I cannot repair those compromised vessels, my main objective is to prevent a second stroke by preventing acute hypertension from mechanically triggering another vascular rupture. The single best proactive measure within M control is closely watching my systolic blood pressure SBP to ensure I keep it strictly within a safe target range. Focusing heavily on SBP protects those calcified microvessels from extra strain and drastically reduces the risk of another stroke. In addition to monitoring my SBP, my daily medication regimen includes taking Keppra. Keppra is a standard medication used to prevent post-stroke seizures, which can be one of the complications following a brain injury like mine. I have noticed that I am experiencing some long-term memory loss, which may be related to the seizures that occurred after my stroke. Managing my blood pressure alongside necessary preventive medications forms the absolute core of my post-stroke daily health routine. Living after a stroke requires a practical, honest approach to energy management. Recovery isn't about forcing your body back to its pre-stroke limits, but rather about understanding how my brain works now, managing my daily energy budget, taking preventive medications as prescribed, and keeping my systolic blood pressure under strict control. A blood pressure watch as an early warning device to help reduce the risk of a second stroke. I also incorporated a wearable blood pressure watch BP watch into my daily routine. I do not regard it as a replacement for my validated Omron blood pressure monitor. Instead, I use it as an early warning device, a smoke detector rather than a definitive blood pressure measurement instrument. Because the watch is always on my wrist, it can alert me whenever my systolic blood pressure SBP appears to rise unexpectedly while I am outside, walking, traveling, or engaged in daily activities or phone conversations. If the BP watch reports an unusually high reading, I do not immediately assume the value is correct. Instead, I regard it as a warning signal to stop what I am doing, find a quiet place, rest, and verify the measurement later with my OMRON monitors under proper measurement conditions. Over the past 3 days, I have compared almost 50 paired measurements between my BP watch and my Omron devices. This experience has allowed me to understand the watch's typical measurement characteristics and limitations, although its absolute accuracy is generally lower than that of a conventional cuff-based Omron blood pressure monitor. It still serves an important purpose by detecting the possibility of an acute blood pressure elevation for someone who has already experienced a hemorrhagic stroke. The value of such a device is not perfect numerical accuracy but timely awareness. In my case, the BP watch functions as a continuous screening tool worn on my wrist 24 hours a day, serving as an early warning device that allows me to respond before a potentially dangerous rise in blood pressure goes unnoticed. Smoke detector versus fire alarm combined with regular verification using my bulky OMRON monitor, whose measurements form the foundation of my longitudinal medical research database. This practical approach has become an important component of my long-term stroke prevention strategy, serving as a reliable early warning device. Similar to a smoke detector, the CT scan and MRI served as the fire alarms of my stroke, confirming that the injury had already occurred. However, I would much rather be warned by a smoke detector before the fire starts. Being alerted early allows me to take immediate action and avoid becoming a victim after the damage has already been confirmed. To be alerted earlier is always better than feeling sorry after confirmation. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, recognition, or financial benefit, but to share what I have learned so that others may better understand their health, prevent disease, and perhaps live longer and healthier lives. This article is provided solely for educational and research purposes. It does not constitute medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor does it establish a physician-patient relationship. Readers should always consult qualified healthcare professionals regarding their own medical conditions and treatment decisions. You are welcome to share this article in its original form for non-commercial educational purpose. However, it may not be modified, edited, republished, or presented as another person's work without the author's written permission. All concepts, analyses, figures, mathematical models, and related intellectual property contained in this article remain the exclusive property and copyright of Gerald C. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own, all intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.